We got you there, Joel.
Yeah, good morning, Scott. How you doing?
Good, buddy. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Or me, I guess.
Yeah, no problem.
Adam is busy today, so it's nice to have someone to talk to instead of trying to do this alone.
No worries, buddy. Happy to be here.
By chance, dude, before we even get into this, did you see Bryce Harper's check swing?
Oh yeah, 100%, dude. I've
Oh
been
my,
watching Angel Hernandez failures all night long while I was at
oh
it.
my God, dude. I just loved how Bryce Harper, and you could hear him. He's like, "You're always wrong. You're always wrong." Just like
Yeah, it was amazing. Just 1 second. I'm just gonna run and grab a glass of water. No, I
Yeah,
thought
do
it
your
was.
thing. Do your thing. Absolutely. All right. So, our Patreon folks, hello. As you may have gathered here, Adam Mack is busy today. So, we've got the wonderful Joel. Hey, call me filling in for him. Very lucky to have him. So excited to talk where we are with this Blue Jays team. I'm in Fernie, BC right now. I had a show here last night, and it was one of the weirder shows I've done in so long. It's funny because when I started comedy at 26, I was always worried about the gray hairs at Legions. We played a Legion last night, and I'm just telling the Patreon here. I'm in Fernie, BC right now. I had this like really weird show at the Legion, and like I always worried when I was younger, a younger comic about Legions because of all the old people. And now that I'm like 41, I go in there and dude, it's all 23-year-old kids and they're all Australians, and I'm just like, I am worried now. It's so weird to have the other side of the spectrum now. I'm like, oh God, I'm old. Are these Gen Zers gonna relate at all? And like,
Oh yeah, man. I,
uh,
I I worry about that too. I worry about that too. That all the writing and work that I've done and scripts that I've written are already out of date. Yeah.
You know what's funny is like I don't even know how reference based I am until I have a bunch of foreigners in the crowd and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm making like Canadian references all over my set. It's just like going right over their heads.
No, that's great.
All right, buddy. Do you have a heart out here? Like, you know how it
No,
goes
you
normally
can
about.
we could probably go till I could probably go 2 hours. I'm not saying
Okay.
we do have to,
Oh
but
no, we won't. We won't. We'll probably be about an hour here, but all right, dude. Let's get into it here. I'll count us in and we'll start this thing off.
sounds good.
In three, two, one. Hello and welcome to the walk off, everybody. I'm Scott Belford, normally joined by the best co host in the biz, Adam Mack. However, he is busy today, so we're very lucky to have good friend of the show, regular on Long Toss, and just an all around good guy. Joel, welcome back, buddy. Hey, call
Hey
me on
Scott.
TikTok. You got to follow his baseball accounts. He is a just a gem of a baseball mind. Joel, we're going to talk all sorts of things here. Before we get into it, I know that the writer's strike is coming to an end here. Can you
Yeah.
fill us in on how this affects you and the fact that you're probably going to be able to get back to work and start moving projects forward?
Yeah, yeah. The writer's strike is coming to an end. Apparently, the actor's strike is right around the corner as well. Apparently, in the next 3, 4
Fantastic.
days, we're going to be. Hopefully, the industry will be back and running the way that it was running, about 6 months ago, which is very much needed because we're coming off of COVID. That was also a big shutdown for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go into a kind of self-induced shutdown with the strike, and now we're coming out of that, and hopefully, the film industry can run properly and get
In
their
your opinion,
head
buddy,
above water.
do you think that with this with COVID and then the strike here, has content quality gone downhill a little bit over the last 4 to 5 years?
Oh,
It
I
feels like
yeah,
it has.
a hundred
Yeah.
percent, absolutely. It's yeah, it is stopped productions. It's stopped people from like the last 3 months has stopped people from sitting down and conversing about ideas, just getting
Mm-hmm.
things moving. Pretty much everything is at a standstill. For me, it was I had some projects with pretty renowned production companies, and that paused. But luckily,
Happy
that
Madison.
yes, exactly right there. Things are right back and running there. I actually have some even more. I don't know how to say it. I have some more momentum now than I did actually when the strike did. Some people have come on board since what's happened with baseball over the last, Otani requiring the surgery,
Mm-hmm.
DeGrom needing the surgery. So the
I'm
the
excited, man. I
yeah,
feel like the world is ready for another baseball movie. It's been too long. And like with the fact that there is an epidemic of arm injuries that just seems to constantly be swept under the rug when it comes to baseball, I love that you've written this Tommy John story. And I love that, especially with him aging and wanting to see it come to fruition in his lifetime and even threatening to pull the rights, not understanding the strike and stuff. I get it. He's 85. But love that it's all coming back together and that it's all back. So congrats on that, man. And fingers
yeah,
crossed things move forward here. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, let's talk some Blue Jays here. Big show for everybody. We are going to get into that Blue Jays and Yankees series. Adam normally takes the helm on three studs and a dud, but I have dug some stuff up here and we'll talk this week's three studs and this week's dud. AL playoff situation starting to clear up a little. There's still some complicated scenarios, but the Blue Jays have definitely put things in their hands. So we'll break that down, and then we'll also break into who we would rather. How do they best line up? Would we rather see them go to Minneapolis? Do we want to exercise some demons in the little trop of horrors? So we'll get your opinion on that. Matt Chapman. Honestly, dude, I have been trying to rack my brain of a comparable for a top end free agent going into his walk year and how much value he has literally taken off of his plate. Like he has cost himself. I mean, we'll see. He is a Scott Boras client. And obviously, he's still probably the top third baseman in the free agent market. That said, I think the thoughts of him getting 200 million and 7-8 years is long gone at this point. We'll also talk the qualifying offer. And then finally, we'll get into this last three games of the year, Tampa Bay and Toronto. So let's start with the Yankees. So I was on Twitter the other day, Joel, and Blue Jays Nation is obviously losing their mind on and off throughout this whole season. 2023 has been frustrating for everybody. And there's a lot of people who constantly are saying the Blue Jays can't hit good pitching, and it's a problem. And friend of the show and analytics expert, in my opinion, Chris Black, had a really interesting breakdown of this. So he went and combed through all the stats and picked up the OPS versus the top 40 starting pitchers this season. Possible playoff teams, right? So Atlanta, and dude, this number blew my mind. Atlanta's OPS against the best 40 pitchers in baseball is still an 818. Like what? Like literally still elite against elite pitching.
Yeah.
It just seems unfair.
Yeah, it really does.
And I mean, the narrative that really Atlanta and the Dodgers are the top of the hill and everything else is far below really, really comes. It shows through in these stats because LA is also sitting at a 772, which is pretty darn good against the best.
Yeah.
And then it's a huge drop. Texas is 710. Houston is 710. Tampa Bay is 695. Minnesota 685. Miami 680. Arizona 668. Seattle 655. And then Toronto in at 651. Chicago 651. And then Philly, Cincy 650, Milwaukee 610, Baltimore 598.
Wow, that's shocking.
Which is something nobody talks about. It's so funny to me how everyone, and this is fan bases, right? You're always looking in at your team and not kind of looking around. There are no real perfect teams in the American League. This league is the most wide open I think it's been in years. Just the fact that Texas has been so hot and cold. Houston just refuses. I do the analogy of like the coffin is ready, the nails have been in, and they're running around without a hammer, right? They just can't. So that means that the Jays are 11th out of 15 teams with a shot at the postseason when it comes to elite pitching. And if you cut out, and I mean, I know there's still a lot that can happen, but we're just going to remove the teams that look like they're on the outside looking in. So that's Seattle, Miami, Chicago. You'd be left with the Jays sitting 9 out of the 12 playoff teams. Obviously not great. But it does kind of line up with a team that's been league average or slightly above league average offense all year. And I don't think it's quite as the Achilles heel as everyone's making it out to be. I'm curious your thought on this because you've watched this team all year. They are frustrating against high end pitching, but I find they're the most frustrating against low end pitching.
Yeah, it is. It's an incredibly difficult offense to watch, but at this point in the year, this is our team, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that a lot of people in the fan base are getting really negative, and I've been negative on the
Yeah,
team from kind of day one on my fears that their offense is not going to perform the way that I would have hoped them to have performed. But at the same time, this is who they are, and the negatives that they have against elite pitching, they also oppose the best elite pitching in baseball, right? So for all those teams that struggle against elite pitching, they're going to be struggling most against us.
dude, here's a
Um,
little stat to back that up. Okay. So Jays pitchers with 31 plus starts this year, Toronto, so these are teams with 31 plus starts. Toronto has 4 pitchers. No team has 3 pitchers. And then Philly, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Seattle, Baltimore, New York Yankees have 2 pitchers. There's 11 teams with 1 and 11 teams with 0. Like, think
11
about
teams
how
with
elite
zero.
that is, dude.
A third of the league is at 0. We're at 4. There's an opportunity that we could have been at 5 this year if Manoah
Yeah,
would have came back, which would have just been I don't know in history of baseball how many teams have been able to do that. But yeah, it's a situation where, look, I love the offense. I love the punch of a team that can go out there and put up 6 runs in an inning and knock you out of the game in a second. But we're a grindy, win it with defense, win it with pitching, and if the clutch hitting comes around, we can win it. We can beat anybody. And so it's kind of that mentality of, you're disappointed with the offense. You're disappointed when you get shut out back-to-back games to the Yankees. And I'm not saying that those are must-win games. We're still ahead. We still like control our destiny, but you don't want to see those shutouts. And the way that we've been kind of shut out in the last, let's say, 60 games, whereas the previous, I think 92, we had gone without being shut out. We had a stretch there going into this year where it was like 91 games, they hadn't been shut out. And now it seems like in the last 50 or 60, we've been shut out about 15 to 20 times. It's been
mm-hmm.
staggering how many times we would shut out as of late. But to their credit, the defense has never stopped and the pitching has never stopped. So we just have to.
It's really wild when you start looking at the numbers, like even the pitching stat that I just gave you there, where Toronto is like they've got 4 pitchers who have come in with 31 starts or more. And then there's nobody at 4, nobody at 3. Like they are just so above the rest of the league with that. You look at defensive runs saved, and it is the same gap, right? Like it's Toronto, and then it's a few other teams, and then it's everybody else. So I'm curious where you're at. I like how you phrase that because we heard Chris Bassett give a very similar speech where he was like, "This is the team. We're at 158 games in. This is what this team is going to do. We're going to win on defense. We're going to win on pitching." Do you think there is value in the team truly believing that? Because I didn't get that it was just lip service from Bassett. There was a genuine sense when he was talking that they believe they can do it with this team. Do you believe they can do it with this team?
Um, Clutch hitting is I feel a very important part of winning in the postseason. Just having that bat come up and hit that big important hit when you need it. And are we in a position where we can trust in that? I don't know. It's very much a position of, like, I look through the history of the game and I think about the 1960 Pittsburgh Pirates. This is a Everybody's like, what? Why are you going back, 70 years, 60 years? I go back that far because that team in the World Series against the Yankees, I believe, was outscored by 20 or 30 runs, but won the World Series.
That's
You can
right.
get blown out 10-0 in game one, then win game two, 2-1.
One,
And get
two.
blown out in
Yeah.
game three, and but you end up winning that 1-run game 4 times out of 7, and you win the World Series, right? I don't think it's going to be. I don't think the series are going to be sexy sweeps where we're just blowing teams out of the water. But can we play a series like the series that we played against Tampa Bay, where we won, 2 out of 3? And to bring it to the question of like, Minnesota or Tampa, where do you want to play? Seeing us take 2 out of 3 against Tampa, where it could have very well been a 3-game sweep,
And
that
probably should have been.
yeah, it very well should have been the 3 games in Tampa at this point in the year when they were still fighting to hold that division, right? So
Yeah.
they're fighting for something. And my position is that the team that we saw in April, that 13-0 team that came out, is not this team now.
No, it's not.
They're struggling to get across the finish line. They have so many injury issues. They have their issues with Wander Franco. So it's just like Tampa may be ahead of us, and teams like Baltimore may be ahead of us, but do I still believe we've got pretty much a coin flip chance against them in the playoff series? Yeah, I do. I really do believe that.
That's the American League. Like, I look around the American League, and outside of Baltimore, who has our number, I'm not necessarily thinking that they are the be-all, end-all team. They have flaws too. We just talked about their OPS against high-end pitching. They're not off the charts with it. Now, they are far more clutch than the Jays have been this year, and that's really why they are where they're at. But I do wonder about the big deal that was made out of those 2 shutouts against the Yankees. Michael King had an incredible game. Garrett Cole is Garrett Cole. He's going to win the Cy Young this year. There's no doubt. Garrett Cole, Cy Young winner 2023. I think there is something to be said with just this happens to all teams, and the fact that it was in game 158, 157 and 156, it sucks, right? Like, bad timing. But there's teams that go 48 hours without scoring a run all the time. Do you read anything into that, or is this just one of those things that happens?
I know that it probably kicked a lot of people, below the belt when it happened. I'm really of the state where, because of the pitching, every single day is you just turn the calendar, you just switch over to the next day and say, we got a good chance of winning today. This person's on the bench, right? And because of that, every day that you can lean on somebody in that pitching staff to give you a chance to win. It's a situation where you would love to come into the playoffs winning 10 of 12. The offense is firing, but like Bassett said, like, we all know this is the team. They will lose and they will, make you want to put your head in the ground. But this team comes out every single day with a chance to win, and they don't let it hang over their heads. The production from the offense isn't where you want it to be, but it doesn't stop them from being on point on defense and coming out every single night with a chance to win. So it is discouraging. It's very discouraging.
Yeah.
To get shut out twice by a team that isn't in the playoffs anymore, and they're pretty much playing spoiler. But you can't let it dissuade you.
It does show you what pitching can do.
Exactly. It does. It absolutely shows you what pitching can do. And King and Cole, all the credit in the world to Garrett Cole. I'm not the I guess I'm pretty much known as the biggest Garrett Cole hater just for foreign substance. But look at what the guy did in the offseason. He retooled himself. He's at that point in his career where the velocity is slowly starting to tick down. It's not 99, it's 97 more often. But his control is incredible this year. He's worked his cutter in, and he has learned to pitch more than be the guy who throws 320 Ks and dominates that way. We've gone from 320 strikeouts in his most dominant year to a just above 200 strikeout year. That's 120 less strikeouts, but he is the same dominance when it comes to ERA, and that is all pitching. That is falling into that stage where you're later on and your skills may be decreasing, but your mind is as sharp as it's ever been. And kudos to him for stepping in and becoming that guy after 4 and 6.
I'm with you, man. And it's funny because I'm the same. I have no love for Garrett Cole, right?
No.
Like, a member of the Astros team that was garbage can banging, wearing pinstripes in our division. I mean, how do you like Garrett Cole? And it pains me to say this, but it is mind-blowing that that contract actually looks pretty good. I mean, if you're going to pick a guy to pay that money to and cross your fingers that you're going to get the results, Garrett Cole's delivering, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is you couldn't ask more than a 2.60 ERA, throwing a complete game shutout on your last game of the season. Too bad the Yankees weren't there for him this year
All right,
because
yeah, exactly.
he's as
Or
dialed in
or
as
or thank goodness they
yeah,
weren't.
thank goodness. Thank goodness. But it's you gotta be like one of those situations where you're Garrett Cole and you're like two back-to-back seasons that weren't maybe up to where you would expect them to be, and then you finally get there and you're not cheating, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and the Yankees aren't there for you. But that's the team that they built, right? They built
Mm-hmm.
this all this money in three places, and if two of those guys aren't on the field for a majority of the season, then Garrett Cole can't carry
Speaking
that by himself.
speaking of those two other contracts,
Yes.
I do want your opinion on Giancarlo Stanton because honestly, dude, I've never seen him look worse.
Mm-hmm.
He continues to decline. He's got so much money still owing on that contract. Um, this was one that stood out to me because, like, that when they got him out at home, it was like watching slow motion. Like, it was just so slow. And I know that StatCast had his foot speed clocked at 5.02 seconds to go those 90 feet. And just to put it in perspective for Blue Jays fans, Alejandro Kirk does those 90 feet in 4.93 seconds.
Wow. The double he hit the other day off the wall, where
Mm-hmm.
Varsho almost got him at second base.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a ball hit like that to land in the gap where you have to go chase it down, turn around, throw, and it's a tenth of a second away from gunning him out. Like his top speed is lollygag. He
Yeah.
lollygags
Truly.
now. So
Truly.
yeah, it is really where do you go with that? All that money, and now you're in a position where you very much have to put Judge in DH about 80, 90 games a year,
Mm-hmm.
because if he goes and runs into a wall and stubs his toe and he's out for
He's too
60
valuable
games,
to
you
not
lose the
have
season.
at the
The
plate. Yeah.
season's yeah. So it's like you have to have him hitting, but then you've got Stanton there. So they've they've backed themselves up on two monstrous beasts who can hit the ball harder than normal humans can. But at the end of the day, did their bodies last for those contracts? Already seems like no. You know.
So let's transition here to three studs and a dud. We're going to start with the studs and an honorable mention. Just a tip of the hat to Brandon Belt, who has come back off of injury. Got the only two hits against Garrett Cole in Wednesday's game. Last night, hit a huge 3-run bomb. He seems to be kind of getting into playoff form. And this is why Brandon Belt was signed. This is why they brought in a guy who's 35 years old and has 2 World Series rings. This is a dude who, watching him yesterday, buddy, I was just like, look at how calm he is. Look at how, like, it could be game 3 of the season with the loose and easiness of his demeanor. And there is something very valuable there, right?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we're a different team when he's slotted 3-4 in the lineup. You the amount that I missed him when he was gone was like I'm realizing it now. Like, oh my God, he's
Yeah.
such a catalyst on this team. And it's one of those dice rolls on, he's injury prone at this point, but if you can get him rolling into the postseason healthy, right? That's kind of your goal.
He could be a
He's there.
legit number 2 or 3 hitter. Like, that's the thing.
Yes.
He has it in him for a short spurt if he can stay healthy to be that guy, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. If you the pitch the pitch he hit yesterday for the 3-run home run was like 92, 93 down the middle. But the problem is we haven't seen Blue Jays punish that pitch this year, and to see him, clear his hips and absolutely rocket that thing. And however, how far did he hit it? It looked like it.
Oh,
Yeah,
has it landed yet?
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is that at the beginning of the year, it was a lot of base hits and doubles, base hits that could have been doubles, but maybe his legs aren't playing to get him to second base at this point. But that swing, like the home run pop, is clearly
Yeah.
there with him right now, and he's got all of his strength. So that is something to be very appreciative of. His OPS is 840, 850 on the year.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the top
him being
OPSs on the
healthy,
team.
yeah, him being healthy going into the postseason is such an amazing positive for this team, and we need
And
it.
honestly, dude, a little bit of credit to the Blue Jays for shutting him down, because you know that they were trying to work him through it. And I think that even he was like, I think I can. You know, I honestly believe if that was the playoffs, Brandon Belt would have played through what was going on. But just having the wherewithal to be like, we need this guy. We need him as healthy as we can get him. Let's shut him down for 10 days. I think that was excellent.
And Biggio being able to step
Yeah.
in and fill that role and become friend of the show, Lewis, put up a tweet about a week ago saying is Kevin Biggio the new Ben Zobrist? And it's like it's a long time waiting for that to happen, but he seems to be very much filling that role.
It's funny, it was always the vision for him.
It was absolutely always the vision. It's always what I wanted him to end up becoming. And maybe it takes a little bit longer sometimes with left-handed bats. I'm not saying he is fully completely this guy that you can plug in there, next year when Chapman loses our third baseman. I'm not saying that yet, but the fact that he has come in and he has been an absolute grinder coming off the bench for us this season and giving us everything that we need when he is only taking flack from 80% of the fan base all the time. Yeah. So I'm very happy that they made that decision. Kevin stood up while Belt was out, and then now Belt's back, and things are looking.
And it's beautiful. So let's get into the studs here. Now, I do wish to just give a fair warning to everyone that yes, they went 2 games in this week where they were completely shut out and had like a total of 6 hits. So take that into consideration with these studs. Okay. But stud number 3, Dalton Varsho. He had a couple dingers, a couple big doubles, a real big walk. He's running the base path incredibly well this week and seems to be heating up as the postseason approaches and continues to just be a menace in the outfield. I mean, his defense is, every time I watch it, and I know that there's some people that are really down on Dalton because of his season and his lack of offense, but watching it start to come around and what he provides in the outfield has playoffs written all over him.
Yeah, I was as hard on that trade at the beginning of the year as anyone could be, but it's what it is now. The trade is what it was.
That's the thing.
There's
no Varsho's with us for 3 more years. Like, he's a part of this core.
Yeah. If Kiermaier is gone next year, he's your starting center fielder. So it's and the fact that he is so defensively inclined, the fact that he runs so well, that he's willing to drop down a bunt whenever you need him to. As soon as the bat comes around, then he is the player that this team is needing. As soon as he hits average, if he pops a 730, 740 OPS, that's absolutely a player that you want on this team and provides in so many different fashions. So, if he can come in for the last little bit of the season here on fire, helping us win, and then be that guy who plays, let's say 2/3 of the time in the postseason, they feel like there's a matchup that he doesn't set up so great against, and then you maybe put in Espinal or Witt's playing. But whatever the case may be, when he's hitting, then he is providing on so many different levels. His defense alone gives him a 3.5, 4 WAR on the season. So yeah.
Stud number 2, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., a couple of dingers. He had 7 hits. He had 5 RBIs. Shutout over those 2 games, but so was everybody. Where are you at, Joel, on Vladdy? Are you skewing more positive? Are you seeing? Because I feel like his swing still isn't where it was, but it's a lot better than where it was, let's say 3 months ago.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely feel like he is. I don't want to say he's fully turned a corner, and but he's more accepting of things right now. I think the emotion is a little bit less. Last night you saw a little bit of it come out when he was struck out and he was slamming his bat, but um, yeah, we got to a point with Vladimir Guerrero where we were talking about trading him and getting rid of him in the off season and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people are still there. I'm always under the mindset that this is a David Ortiz situation happening. As soon as you get rid of him, he cracks 45 somewhere else, brings a team to 3 World Series wins over
Yeah.
a decade, and you're just banging your head against the wall because you didn't have the patience with a guy who's 24, has franchise records at that age with,
Look at what
hits at that
patience did
point.
for Kevin Biggio, dude.
Yes. Yeah. And, there's a lot of frustration at this age. Whether it's the home ballpark situation has been brought up. But I really think it comes down to approach. I really think it came down to that. He had 1,000 at bats in the league. He had figured something out. He had that runner-up season. Then the league adjusted to him, and they were afraid that this is a bat that will change a game. This is the type of guy who, if he gets that pitch down the middle, he's gonna deposit in the seats. So we really have to pitch low and away. We have to stay away from his power. And whereas Bo is so great at going opposite field, Vladdy hasn't. Vladdy's amazing at going the opposite field, but he
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been so able to, whether it's be patient or find that pitch and look for that pitch away right at the beginning. Those are very basic things. Those are mentality things, mindset things. If he gets those things right, then he's back to being one of the 3 best bats in the league for the next 15 years. So I always, you're not, the talent in that man doesn't come around every day. So when you've got it, you got to be patient with it. You can't just throw it away when things aren't looking so great, because what might happen is he's carrying another team by himself. So you can't have that. So yeah, I'm still positive on Vladdy, and who knows, maybe the postseason he flips a switch when it's everything's on the line, and this is what he maybe he gets into the postseason and he's like, this is what I've been waiting for
Mm-hmm.
so long, and then he excels again. So
Maybe Brandon Belt gets hot and takes a little bit of pressure off the kid. I don't
that'd be really
know.
great.
There's a lot of good things that can happen here. Okay, I think that most people watching this right now already know who stud number one is. He just finished with 7.2 innings last night, 12 Ks, and hit the 200 inning mark. Stud number one, Chris Bassett. He has been incredible, dude. His 23 outings of at least 6 innings, 10 of them 7 frames or more, allowed the Blue Jays to win pretty much any night. Like, think about where this team would be without Chris Bassett and the face plant that was Alek Manoah this year. The guy has been literally unbelievable. 33 starts this year,
33.
200 innings, man. Like, just 16 wins. Blue Jays franchise history, like, this has happened 6 times. And the other guys to do this were Roy Halladay and Dave Stieb. 2 times, it was Roger Clemens, David Wells, Pat Hankins, Jimmy Key. Like, dude, and for one time, Jack Morse, AJ Burnett, Chris Bassett.
And Bassett's 34.
4.
34. First time he's ever done in his career at 34. Um, just I think I texted you guys the other day saying I want a safety blanket with Chris Bassett's face
Yes.
on it,
Yes.
because he's been that guy all season long. Like, you remove that little cluster at the beginning of the season where he's kind of blown up a little bit, and then the quality starts, the innings give the guy endless credit that when he doesn't have his stuff, he still goes six.
Mm-hmm.
He still goes six, and it's his job to wear a loss. And they're like, it's so to be that guy who isn't like, oh, things aren't going so good for you, we're gonna take you out in the second and run the bullpen all game. Guys like that, their ERA gets saved a bit. because they're being, treated with kids gloves. When he's having a bad game, they're just like, you got to pitch 100 pitches. You're not out of this game until you throw the ball 100 times, no matter how you're feeling. And for him to get to 200 innings, have a 3.60 ERA is
Yeah.
WHIP is like a buck 11, a buck 12, 180 strikeouts in that
Just
range.
to put into perspective, too, Joel, like Garrett Cole leads the AL with innings pitched at 209. Chris Bassett is second at 200. Like, it is incredible the amount of
paying
innings
him
this man is eating.
paying him 11, 12 million less than Garrett, and
Yeah.
it has truly been for the negativity that I give for signings in the movement for Atkins and Shapiro. This signing has
Fantastic signing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm
and
putting
it's
it
funny
right
because
up there
we
with
are
that.
starting to see, yes, obviously Shapiro and Atkins has their downfalls. But when it comes to recognizing and going in on pitching, their record is pretty darn good, man. Like,
Oh,
they could have went, and I know you were really against, like, you weren't against it, but you were pro Robbie Ray, and you were surprised that they let him walk for $5 million and went after Gosman, and now it's obvious that was obviously their target all along.
mhm.
And my goodness, like, has it ever worked out? Yusei Kikuchi has been just, I mean, everyone
Robbie
was
Ray.
like, what a waste of money when they first went out and got him. And he has been I mean, for 10 million, I know it was a front loaded contract. So yes, they did pay him 16 million last year. That didn't really work out. But I mean, for 10 million this year and 10 million next, the amount of value that dude has, even if they decide to do something crazy and move him in the off season for something of more need, right? Offense. But the value he has for that money that they're paying him right now is through the roof. It's been so impressive, them being able to bolster this bullpen. And yes, I know that the bullpen has been their Achilles heel in 2021, a year that still kills me to talk about. Not as much as you, I know, but like, it's up there as just oh, what a dagger that year was to watch them with such a potent offense lose, but because of the bullpen. But it's good that this front office learned their lesson, right? Like, even going out and spending two of their top pitching prospects on Jordan Hicks this year is something I don't think we would have seen them do even 12 months ago.
Yeah, and their trust in the Pete Walker coming in with like guys like Genesis Cabrera,
Yeah.
the time that it takes to get Kikuchi ready. It took a year. It took a
Yeah.
year to get past the communicative barrier, to put him into that mentality of being like what Pete Walker did with like a J.A. Happ previously. Like he's a lefty pitching whisperer, right? He takes lefties and he just magically gets them to the top of their potential, right? And
Which just
the
really makes it so much better for the Blue Jays to go out and get a guy on a 1 year contract to try and rebuild him, right? Because now there's pitchers out there that are like, maybe I do want to work with Pete Walker. Look at what he's done for Kikuchi and Robbie Ray and some of these other pitchers that has completely revitalized their career and made them millions of dollars after that 1 year. So I think it does have a lot of value just watching these guys have rebound years and have rebounds in their career for what this front office can go out and do in the offseason.
Yeah, and you got to know your strengths. At the same time, maybe that tells you that if you are so trustworthy in your pitching coach, that maybe having a hitting coach that you trust is something to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just goes to show that they know where their talent lies in player development, and they're able to look at somebody and say, we can tinker that and make it incredibly valuable, and we can trade pieces that they don't help us right now. The return seems small, but as soon as we get that player in a Blue Jays uniform, we can tweak them, and you'll watch those ERAs just fall off the table the way Genesis again is.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he comes over here, he goes on a stretch of 16 innings where he's not giving up a run, right? So it's just like that there's a switch being flicked on these pitchers, and the fact that we can flick that switch with talent is a great boost for this organization, and you got to give them props.
Couldn't agree more. Stud one, Chris Bassett, well deserved this week.
Absolutely.
Okay, now for a little bit more negativity. And I think what we're going to do is when I say this dud, we'll just move our one topic up, which I'm giving it away here. The dud this week has been Matt Chapman. And outside of that solo home run last night, he is, well, with that solo home run, he's 1 for 18 in his last 6 games. He has 7 strikeouts in that time. He's taken 1 walk. He hasn't moved a runner up. He hasn't provided literally anything offensively, dude. Like, it is mind-blowing, the slump that this guy is in. Hopefully that solo home run shot gets him going a little bit here. But Matt Chapman, dud this week.
Dud. Absolute dud. And starting to get in my head concepts of prima donna after that pull, after he was pulled.
Yeah.
And then he was left in.
And I know he's frustrated.
Yeah, no, completely frustrated. And then he had a clutch hit kind of right after that. But since then, maybe he's sitting there with the, upturned nose, and he has maybe the respect in the locker room is down because he feels like he's been disrespected. He's never been pinch hit before. How dare you do that to me? And maybe that's in his head a little bit more too. But I absolutely agree. And that, that home run he hit yesterday was, it was nice. He went opposite field. He had a little bit of power behind it, but I don't think that that's something that you're magically going to see happen every second game now, where I still feel like he's right in the middle of this massive slump since May. He had an incredibly hot April, and it really, I think Matt Chapman really goes to show you that you can look at the numbers that the guy has at the end of the year. You can look at the back of his baseball card, but that OPS doesn't tell you the entire story. No. Especially when a guy puts up like one really legitimate month and then kind of sandbags it for the remaining 5 on a contract year where he's seemingly healthy. He's come back from hip injury. You would think that the power would be on full display this year, and it wasn't. So yeah, it is. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody go into their free agent year and absolutely tank their value as much as Matt Chapman has this year.
Like, let's dive in deep here, because Manny Machado re-upped on his contract with the Padres in the offseason. And at that point, Matt Chapman and Scott Boras had to have been doing backflips and high fives, because that just put him to the top of a very, very valuable positions free agent class, right? The hot corner, it is a tough position to play. We've watched when Kevin Biggio was struggling at third, and what a detriment it can be to a team to have somebody who can't make those plays day in and day out. And that's one thing that Matt Chapman has done. But honestly, Joel, I'm almost at the point where I'm like, you know what? Fuck defense. I don't even give a shit what he's providing there anymore. Like, you can't have someone at a position like third base that is normally known to provide some power, provide some RBIs, and be one of those guys in that 2 to 6 spot in the lineup range. And that's what Chapman was last year. I was fine with what Chapman did in 2022.
Yeah.
But it has been just a face plant. Like, I can't even, I can't think of a comparable though. Like, I just can't. And it's almost at the point, and I'm going to get your opinion on this in a second here. So MLB, Rob Manfred came out and announced that the qualifying offer is getting a bump this year. So it was $18.5 million last year. It is now going to be $20.5 million. Of course, the qualifying offer is a 1-year deal. And if he turns it down, there are now draft picks attached to him in his free agent year, which is even more detrimental after what he has just done for this season. Now, that said, Aroldis Martinez, sitting in the weeds in AAA, he has really come around with his bat. His average is much higher than it was. He's not just hitting for power anymore. You're seeing a lot more versatility out of his bat, hitting doubles, hitting singles, getting on a little bit more. 22 years old next year. So he's still incredibly young. Addison Barger is also on the bubble of this big league team, and he plays a pretty solid third base. Again, right? Turning 25, hasn't played in the majors yet. Davis Schneider plays third base and has probably earned himself a good look as an everyday player coming out of spring training, whether it's second or third base or a combo of the two. Does Matt Chapman make sense on a 1-year qualifying offer, even if they're paying him freaking $10 million more than probably they should be? Just to have some of that. It's for safety purposes almost, right? Having a guy you know at least defensively is going to be there while these kids try to find their footing. Can you see the Jays offering qualifying offer and being prepared to bring Matt Chapman back if he takes it? And even further into this discussion, can you see Scott Boras allowing him to take this offer? Like, Scott Boras isn't an idiot, right? $20 million is still not a bad payday for a guy who has just provided almost nothing from May 1st on.
I think that it's very possible. Looking like at what we pay him, I think we're paying him something in the 12 to 15
Yeah.
million range is what we're at.
So
it's a
they bought his
$5 million
years out. It was 2 years, 25 mil last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
12 and a half.
yeah. So you're talking about a $7.5 million bump. That doesn't kill us.
Provides a safety net.
Yeah, and Boris is in a situation where, like, he's looking not only at a third baseman who is the only third baseman available, but he's looking at, like, the Mets and the Yankees both need a third baseman. They're willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money to fill that spot, and you've got a client here who's not, filling those shoes. If they're like, well, maybe we don't want to pay for that guy if he's hitting eighth on the Blue Jays right now. So yeah,
and should have been for months.
Yes, absolutely. Should have been hitting it for absolutely for months. And yeah, do I want to do it? I think I'm at the point where I would be fine with the youth trying to take that step and fill it with Barger, Biggio, Martinez next year, try to kind of like just rotate around and make it like a merry-go-round at third. I'm almost as comfortable doing that as re-upping with Chapman. I do like the 1-year deal, though, to say we've been really good with 1-year deals in the history of this team recently. Shapiro, Atkins have been good with 1-year deals. So to say, here's a 1-year deal, you get to prove yourself and then potentially, reevaluate yourself as being that $200 million player if you could put up 25 to 28 homers. And it gives you a chance to reload the bullet on your free agency, and that could be very beneficial for both parties, right? If Chapman says, you know what, a 1-year deal gives me a chance to sign at 31, 5 years, 160, 170 million. It's good for both parties involved. Do I want it to happen? I don't know. Like I said, I've had that sour taste in my mouth for him.
There are a lot of question marks, and you kind of mentioned it earlier. And the big question mark is, what does that clubhouse think of Matt Chapman? What is the relationship like there? Because this is all speculation, and the safest bet is that they're fine. Everything's fine. And the thing with bringing Matt Chapman back, I'd be all for it, but I want zero rope given. Right? Like, if one of these kids knock him off, sorry, we're just overpaying a bench piece that's going to be a defensive stalwart when we need him. Maybe he can come in late in games for a kid like Aroldis Martinez that you just know is going to take some time to learn how to play the hot corner in the big leagues. It's just like Addison Barger, same thing, right?
Yeah, and then halfway in the season, we trade him.
100%.
Halfway through the season, a team loses a third baseman, and we go, you know what? We've got somebody who's playing it just fine. Buy Matt Chapman, and you deal.
And if Matt Chapman comes out and has a huge year and proves himself, that's just a bonus, right? Like, great. But I think it is time for the Blue Jays, because you look at the open market, there's not a lot out there for third baseman. I think it is time to give an internal option a chance at this, especially considering some of their top prospects are viable third baseman options.
You can
So
do a platoon. You
yeah,
have an opportunity to platoon with Biggio there, running Biggio. I think the other reason why I'm a lot more comfortable is because Biggio's defense over the last 6 weeks, 2 months has kind
best
of
I've ever
opened my
seen it.
eyes. Yeah, it's
Best I've ever
really
seen it,
opened my
dude.
eyes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm very Cavan stepping in and making plays, diving plays, and gunning guys out. I'm like, that looks very Chapman-esque.
Mm-hmm.
So
Especially when you look back on 2021 and what a defensive liability he was at third
yes,
base. And he was never really known for his defense. It was about his versatility. And you can just tell the amount of work and effort and time he has put in to that side of the game, that aspect of baseball, right? His glove side of things. Because, man, I was really nervous when they started playing him at third base. And now I feel silly.
yeah, I saw some of the best plays at third base from Cavan Biggio.
Yeah,
Right? Like
it's
if you
been
do a
mind blowing.
highlight reel of third base this year, 30% of the plays are from Cavan Biggio.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Okay, so let's move on to the AL playoff situation. Things are starting to clear up. Absolutely a huge win from the Jays. Obviously, Jays fans were really hoping that the Mariners would drop that game yesterday, and they wound up coming back and getting the win. But right now, the Jays' magic number still sits at 2. And if they can get a win tonight against Tampa, all they need is either Seattle or Houston to lose, and they are in. So they could clinch tonight. They have also eliminated the chance of them being ousted from the playoffs before Sunday. So even if they lose these first 2 games, they still have the option of pulling out their ace, Kevin Gausman, for game 162. Nightmare scenario.
Mhm.
But the fact that they've given themselves the chance to go down with their best on the hill is something.
Yes.
Um, Baltimore clinched yesterday, so the Rays now have very little to play for outside of.
Mhm.
They're going to go into the mode of matching up their pitching for what they want in the wild card, resting their top guys. The Rays are very injured right now as well, so I think they're going to do the best they can to kind of get that lineup right to the best of their ability.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. So we're going to skip right into the matchups. How does this Jays team match up against these teams? And who do you want? I know we talked a little bit about it off the top of the show. Tampa Bay, again, just to reiterate, very injured. The Rays find a way, but how many bullets do they have, Joel? Like, listen, I give all the credit and respect in the world to the Rays organization because they do constantly find a way to have the next man up. Their pitching has been devastated all year. They literally have Cy Young candidates on the injured list, not just one, multiple. Tyler Glasnow is back, but hasn't looked quite like the Tyler Glasnow that we remember from 2021 yet. He's looking good, but he's not that elite ace that maybe we all remember. Minnesota's pitching is fantastic.
Mhm.
I can see Sonny Gray going 8 innings and being unhittable.
Yeah.
But Minnesota also they're hitting recently, which
Mhm.
is when you, if you
Royce
look at
Lewis is
their,
hitting grand slams every second game.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the greatest hitter of all time, Royce Lewis. But you look at their numbers, and honestly, dude, from April to August, hitting has been very much like the Blue Jays and like the Mariners, their Achilles heel, but they've heated right up. Do we want any part of Minnesota?
That's I really feel like it's I'm not so scared of Tampa right now. I feel like they're a 500 team since the last 4 months of the baseball. They pretty much got to their 20 games, 25 games over 500 very early on in the season, and
Like the middle of May?
yeah, and then have remained there as a pretty much 500 baseball team since, right? So
Yeah.
I don't feel the fear, especially that series that we just saw the Jays play against Tampa. I don't, that fear isn't there. I don't think that they stack up against us, especially pitching.
Mm-hmm.
Their bats have been incredibly depleted. Your franchise player, the player that you put all of your hopes and dreams into the one time they've ever done it comes and bites them in the ass, and you don't have that player anymore. And so it's a big situation. They've got some talent like Yandy Diaz and Isaac Paredes are smashing the ball, but like at the same time, I'm not afraid of Tampa. I'm just not. And
Might be
so
the
I
first time
honestly,
I've ever, I agree with that. I mean, these are famous last words from Blue Jays fans,
yes,
but
yeah, absolutely famous last words. But it's this team just doesn't. Tampa, if they truly scared me, they would have scared me in that 3-game series where they were still fighting for the division, right? Because they were still fighting. They still wanted to be first place, and we came in there, and for the, all of one inning, we should have beat that team 27 straight innings and win 3 in a row. And so I'm not afraid. I'm not. And so it's a very similar situation to us going into Minnesota or Tampa. I know the history says that we should be afraid of Tampa, but it's just that team isn't that scary.
well, I keep saying, man, demons are meant to be exercised, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's time.
Yeah.
The Rays have had their run against us. Let's end it here in 2023. So
Oh, we owe
I'm
them a
kind of
two.
with you.
We owe them a 2-game series, sweep, and I'm I'm as much of a cynic on this team as there has been all year long, but to be in this position and you just pull back a little bit and you look, you go, we can beat Minnesota and we can beat Tampa and we can beat Texas and Baltimore has our number and we can beat Houston. So it's just like I'm not my enthusiasm isn't through the roof saying, oh yeah, we got a World Series here, but Jays can beat the teams in the American League that we're going to face. We can beat them.
Before we move on to the final topic and just get into this Tampa Bay series, this final series of the year, I do want your opinion on a general narrative from a portion of the fan base, which is this team doesn't hit. When they do, it's a little bit luck based and they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Joel, is there any way that a 90-win team is luck based? Or is that just completely off base?
I think people with that opinion, because I'm one of those people who is, we had an offensive juggernaut and we've shifted it to a defensive and pitching.
Juggernaut.
Sure. Yes. Right. And so it's a shift. It's a shift in watching your team succeed one way and it being a very exciting way. You're putting 3-run homers up on the board and everybody's cheering and you're putting 10 spots up and you're blowing teams out of the water and you're happy from beginning to end. It's a very grindy wins now. You win
Yes.
through 9. Everybody has a piece. You use 3 guys out of the bullpen who come in and shut down those later innings and you win it as a team, as opposed to the one guy would absolutely tee up a ball and you'd win off of a guy hitting 2 home runs that day. Like it was very much, let any massive piece of the offense win for you that day. Now it feels like it's a very team-based win. When they get that win, when they're sitting there at the end of the day, 1 run higher, it's because the defense was on point. The pitching was great from the starter all the way through to the back end. And so we're not in that position where we need to be the flashy offense anymore. But so it's really just an identity shift, I think, that get a lot of people agitated, is because they saw how we used to win it. They saw how exciting it was. And now it's not. And but you can't win 90 games especially in the AL East by luck. You can't do that.
You can't.
And it's just
This is
so
such a
much.
good point, Joel. I really like the framing of what you're saying because you're right. Like this fan base has been the most negative on a winning team that I can ever remember. And I think it's a really good point about the shift in how they're doing it. And it just feels so different from what we're used to, especially considering this franchise has been a home run, power based franchise for over a decade, right? Like when we watched them succeed in 2015 and 2016, my God, dude, in 2015, Josh Donaldson had 42 home runs. Jose Batista had 42 home runs and Edwin Encarnacion had 39. Like they had like over 120 home runs in their 2 to 4 hitter. I mean, Vladdy's at 26 home runs. Nobody's I maybe someone in the grounds crew can help us out here. When was the last time the Blue Jays didn't have a 30 home run hitter? Because I can't think of it off the top of my head.
The COVID shortened season. No, I'm sorry. That's just a stupid answer. No, it's true. We are that team that rolls that top heavy offense that you go 1 through 4, and you're usually dealing with guys that are absolutely slugging. The offense
It's easy to like this type of team when they're the opposition, because I remember last year watching Cleveland, and so many people were like, oh man, Cleveland's such a fun team. I would love it if the Jays were a little bit more like Cleveland. And now that we are, everyone's like, ugh, this is disgusting.
yeah, it's the home run shift is really it's just a wild way of, we used to win this way and now we win this way.
Mhm.
And it's an identity shift, and we have to get over it. And if they can win, then what does it matter if they can win? You know, how they do it shouldn't matter as much as the fact that they are winning. So let's just shift in how we get it done.
It kind of reminds me of the 2004 Calgary Flames, right? And they were a trap based team. They hadn't won in forever. And I'm a diehard Flames fan. And that team, man, like they won 2-1, 3-2 almost every game. And it was grind them out hockey. It was ugly. I loved it, but like it wasn't fun hockey to watch, right? And that was actually the team that inspired the NHL to crack down on the trap in 2005 and like eliminate so many of those rules of the clutching and grabbing and stuff. And that's kind of the identity of this Toronto Blue Jays team this year, is like beat them in the corners, right? I mean, to take a hockey reference, like it's really defensive based. I mean, we went over the pitching stats already earlier in the show. Like it is insane what this pitching and defense is doing. And I know that when the front office attempted to make this team more defensive orientated, I don't think they expected the pendulum to swing quite this far. But now that it is, we just got to play it out. Like obviously there's going to be some tweaks in the off season. You agree with that, right? Even if they go deep on a run, there's some offensive things that need to be addressed, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we all know that they shifted a little bit too much defensively, but at the same time, it hasn't. We're winning. Would it have been nice to win a few more games with a home run? And
Yeah.
yes, but you have to play the cards that you've dealt yourself right now. And in the offseason, they may make a few changes to shift it kind of a little bit more of a happy medium of offense and defense. But to their credit, they found a way to win with offense, and now they found a way to win with defense. And there was no time in between.
Mm-hmm.
So they've and yeah,
it's funny because I've hit kind of the acceptance side of the scale. Like I obviously everyone went through the denial and went through the bargaining and went through all of these different stages. And I'm at acceptance. Here we are, game 160 tonight against the Rays. This team is what it is. And I'm actually impressed with some of the fan base that hasn't hit that step yet. They're still like trying to come to terms with the fact that this team is so differently built than it was last year. But what do you do? Like, I think even the players, it took time for them to get to that kind of point where they're like, you know what? This is who we are, I guess.
Yeah, and it's the other difference is that in previous years you were cheering that entire lineup. You were cheering 1 through 9, and the lineup is what fueled you day to day. You're like, I can't wait to watch that lineup. Now your enthusiasm is shifted towards the pitcher on that night. It's not 9 guys who are like, I can't wait to watch that lineup kick ass tonight. I'm looking forward to Barrios, Kikuchi, Bassett, Gosman, and I'm looking forward to the pitching. Ryu, I'm looking forward to who's going to pitch tonight. So you've shifted from, oh, we're going to kick their ass and we're going to slug the shit out of whoever we're playing against, to my hopes and prayers are on one guy on the mound locking it down tonight, us getting a few clutch hits and winning 3-2. So, like I said, you used to cheer for 9. Now we cheer a lot more for 1. I'm not
Mhm.
saying we don't cheer for the lineup, but our feelings of victory and what makes us competitive has shifted very much to a singular person and the defense as opposed to that lineup and being
Exactly.
in love with that lineup.
It is funny how often a Jays win happens and the conversation afterwards is, my God, that catch by Kevin Kiermaier, or my goodness, that performance from Jordan Romano, or my God, can you believe what Tim Meza did? You're right. There isn't the 1 through 9 love that there was last year. Okay, let's get into this Tampa Bay series. We'll wrap things up with that. Kikuchi lining up tonight against Aaron Savali. Hyun-Jin Ryu with his final start of the year against Zach Lytle. And then question mark game 3, Kevin Gausman is lined up. Obviously, they will probably call up Bowden Francis or do a bullpen day or whatever they wind up doing. I think Gauze is lined up for game 1 of the wild card as long as they don't completely face plant. Like, again, they're almost in at this point, right? Magic number 2. So any combo of 2 losses from Houston or Seattle, or 2 wins from the Jays, or 1-1 in any way, and the Jays are in.
Yeah, I really feel like that the team has an opportunity to kind of remedy not just like, this is hindsight is 2020, of course, but the idea of Manoah starting game 1, being our opening day starter, if we can get those 2 wins tonight,
Mm-hmm.
so that we know that Gausman has got the ball. That's what we're playing for right now.
Yeah.
We're playing for Gausman being our first starter in the postseason, starting game 1 of the postseason. So that's like the Jays may, there's a lot to play for right there. You want that so much, and you don't want to be going into that last day with a question mark. So, and it allows us to, you know, I know I'm going to be a lot of stress will be relieved knowing that Gausman is starting that opening game. That's where we need to be, right? He's our guy. He's the one we're paying that big money to, and it kind of lets us, like I said, exercise the demons. We've talked about that tonight of maybe putting people in that situation that weren't ready for it, and we definitely know that Gausman is ready for it. So.
Let's end on this. Chris Bassett, starter number 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just been so good in September. Like, he has literally ramped up as the year has gone on. And I think that he probably is the guy that they should go with there.
I think he's gotten better as soon as the rotation became a 5-man and they were able to get that little bit of extra time. He was talking about it middle of the season, how taxed those starters were. They were never able to get that extra day whenever they had it. And since the starting rotation filled out, he's been able to get that proper rest. He's been absolutely electric. And he's, if he's firing on all cylinders, he gets you into the 8th. I know that that's wild to think of in the postseason,
Yeah.
but he's a guy who can, when he's firing on all cylinders, he can get you into the 8th inning, and that is so much when it comes to postseason.
And listening to him speak about last year's playoffs and how much it has stuck with him and how much it has eaten him up. Like, I had no idea that this was something that was in his brain for the last 12 months, right? So I think just with the bulldog in him that he has been this year for the team. I know it's the Hound, but you know what I'm saying, right? So I think you got to go with Bassett. So, and you know what? Jose Barrios in a game 3, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm all for it too. Bassett, though, is really the 200 innings. The fact that he's gone 200 innings and he still seems like he's peaking at 200 innings. He's not running out of fumes.
Exactly.
Barrios has kind of looked like he's he's a little bit taxed here in his last
Mhm.
few starts, and
Yeah.
maybe he's not, he gets to the end of the season, maybe he's running on fumes, but doesn't look like Bassett is. It's that big
And
frame
one
of
thing about
his.
Barrios that I think will benefit the Jays in a short series is Barrios has looked really good in any first 3 innings of this month.
Yeah.
He always seems to hit a wall in the fourth. And if that happens in the playoffs, you've got Yusei Kikuchi in the pen who could go a couple of innings and then bridge that gap to the bullpen. I think that Barrios may have a short leash, but I think that what he can provide in those innings he does pitch will be solid.
Especially if you can take Kikuchi and dissect lefty heavy bats. When you get to
Mm-hmm.
that part, in the fifth, you got three of the next four guys are lefties. Let's bring in Kikuchi to attack that spot. Saves Meza for later, and everything's just lines up really really well with having those five starters and being able to kind of shift one into that extended Ross Stripling role, and just know that you've got that 3 ERA backup pitcher sitting there for your in case one of your starters doesn't go 3 or 4. So it's a good position to be in. Absolutely.
Let's end it on that, Joel. Go Blue Jays, go. We really appreciate you stepping in and filling in for Mr. Mac, buddy.
Oh,
Always a
happy to
pleasure
be
to
here.
chat baseball with you, my friend.
Anytime.
Before I let you go, are you free on Sunday? We're going to put you on the spot here. Can you make long toss work, our last long toss before the
Absolutely.
playoffs?
Absolutely.
Yes. Awesome.
I'll be there.
All right. To everyone in the grounds crew, thank you so much for following along. Hit that like button, subscribe if you have not, and we will see you all on Sunday.